for all of us, and especially because there are some things that we do that might actually put us in trouble. What am I talking about? Of course, today will be all about our ear and hearing, all right? Because ear and hearing problems are among the most common problems encountered in the community, and to raise more awareness on the same, the world marks Hearing Day every 3rd March, and that is to promote ear and hearing care. So this year, the emphasis is on integrating ear and hearing care within primary care as an essential component of universal health coverage. So the question is, how are we doing as a country? We'll be talking about in just a short while. And remember, 3rd will be on Friday. So as you know, we're always ahead of things, yeah? So we want to talk about it today so that we can raise awareness even as we prepare for the day. And that is on 3rd March. But let's start with the numbers. So what do they look like? And this is as far as the hearing loss statistics. So the number of people actually suffering some degree of hearing loss includes 460 million people, and this is across the globe, and 135 million, and this is in the continent, and that is in Africa. But let's bring the numbers home, and according to statistics, well, the numbers are actually estimated to rise by 2.5 billion people. This is globally by 2050, while at least 200 million people will be requiring rehabilitation, and this is according to a statistic by the WHO that is of 2021. So like I said, bringing the numbers home, so according to the Kenya Population Census of 2019, hearing disability accounts for 0.4% of the population, and this is the 4th highest disability after mobility, vision, and cognitive disabilities. All right, so what do they look like exactly? So 2 million Kenyans actually suffer some degree of hearing loss. 15% of the people aged 50 plus years have a level of hearing loss, and of course 25% of children aged 5 to 14 years have some level of hearing loss. So the big question is, what exactly is it that we are doing that puts us at risk? And this is as far as hearing loss. What exactly are some of the hearing problems or diseases that are around, and what is it that we can do to prevent the same? Well, not to worry, because that whole conversation is coming up, so you want to stick around and literally pay attention, all right? And this is as far as that conversation, and that is on the Hearing Day. So what we're saying is, what exactly are you doing that somewhat puts you at risk? And this is as far as developing hearing problems and most likely hearing loss. So tell us, I know most of us use earphones a lot of the time, all right? Is that a risk in itself? We'll find out. Those people who like to pick their ears with the earbuds, is that a problem or not? Again, you will find out from the conversation today. But of course, to help us drive this conversation, we have Manasseh Bosha, who is the head of clinical services and focal person, and this is as far as EHC is concerned, from the Ministry of Health. It's so good to see you. Karibu sana to the show. And of course, we also have Dr. Lilian Wairimu Moko, who is an ENT surgeon that is at the Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital. Good to see you this morning, Dr. Lilian. Of course, we also have Dr. Sarah Ndegwa, who is an audiologist as well as a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. So good to see you this morning. Karibuni sana. I think Dr. Sarah and Dr. Lilian we've met, but on a totally different show, not this one. So Manasseh, it's good to meet you. Finally, karibuni sana to the conversation. Manasseh, let me start with you. These numbers, and especially the numbers in the country, they're not, a true representation of the burden of hearing, right? Why is that the case?
Yeah, thank you for welcoming us to your show. Good morning, Kenyans. It's true, around 2 million Kenyans have some degree of hearing loss.
All right.
Actually, it's disabling, but we need to come up with a true prevalence of hearing loss in the country, all right, which we are yet to establish as a country. All right. But we are working on it through these strategies that we are developing from the ministry. One of it is to come up with a true prevalence of hearing loss of our Kenyans. But WHO estimates it to be around 15%
all right,
of the normal population. 15% have some degree of hearing loss.
All right. And of course, I know for us as a country, sometimes data is usually, a big challenge. Yes, for so many aspects. I want to imagine this is the case as well. But like you're saying, something that is being worked on, just to make sure that we get the actual numbers. And Dr. Lilian, and of course Manasseh has mentioned the whole question about hearing loss, right? But before we get to that, what are some of these like hearing problems, diseases, conditions that we're looking at?
Okay, so thank you so much for inviting us to your show today. And I would like to say that when you talk about hearing problems, you can either talk about ear diseases or hearing conditions.
All right.
Ear diseases are the diseases that or infections that commonly affect the ear. That can either be infections, can be autoimmune diseases, just the normal spectrum of diseases that can affect any other part of the body can affect the ear.
All right.
When we talk about hearing conditions, these are conditions that affect the ear and cause your ability to hear or to have balance, to have a problem. So when you have a reduced ability to hear is when you have the hearing conditions.
All right.
And this can either be classified as reversible or irreversible.
Okay.
Now, the funny thing is that most of the time, when you have damage to your inner ear and you have hearing problem, it is usually not reversible. A very small percentage of it is reversible, but the good thing is that 60% of it is preventable.
All right.
So it may not be reversible, but it is preventable.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We'll look at some of the common ones, and I think this is where, Dr. Sarah, I want you to chime in. What are some of these common, conditions that you see either from the diseases or from, the whole question about hearing? What are some of the things that you most commonly deal with or people come to you for?
Well, when it comes to children, the common thing will be they come with delayed speech and language development. And so then that one calls for us to do hearing screening and diagnosis to find out what's the level of hearing. Among school children could be because of some of the ear infections like otitis media, that is quite a common cause, as well as just wax. Then there is the issue of young adults. Of course, noise exposure is quite key as one of the causes. And some of them, it's also to do with the occupational noise induced hearing loss. So that's an important factor. Then when it comes to the elderly or people getting a bit older, let's say, like we said in our statistics, more 15% of people over 50 years have some degree of hearing loss.
All right.
So all of those are some of the common factors that would lead to hearing loss.
Okay, all right. But the question is, what is it that we do that sort of expose us to some of this, conditions that we see maybe on a day-to-day basis? You want to comment on that?
Noise is one of the, one of those, and excessive noise. If it's in the workplace, for example, noise levels that are above 85 decibels potentially puts you at risk for developing hearing loss, as well as all these, systems that we are using, earphones and all that. If the noise levels are very high, you expose yourself to, too much noise, you potentially get a hearing loss. So those are, and then of course recreational activities, which again expose you to noise, like firecrackers, some of the recreational activities that people do where there's a lot of noise, that can expose you to getting, or predispose you to getting a hearing loss. And the type of hearing loss one gets as a result of that is usually permanent and not reversible. So of course care to make sure that you don't get there is important.
That's very scary. Talk about that, because a lot of people and especially when it comes to music, just focusing on noise a little bit, a lot of people will say, I enjoy my music when it's loud, all right? So even with earphones, you'd find a lot of people, blasting the music literally, right? So the question is it a question of the amount of time that maybe you expose yourself to such noise, if I can ask that, or it can come suddenly?
So there are two aspects of how noise affects your ears.
All right.
So sound usually is presented into your ears under pressure. We know that sound usually travels under pressure in air. And sudden, very loud noise can cause changes in pressure that will affect the ear, and that can cause a sudden hearing loss. That is as a result of the high pressures from the high sound. Again, the other aspect is now the noise. And when we talk about noise, it's not just the amount of noise, that is the level of noise. It is also the duration of time that you're exposed to. So the higher the level of noise, it is directly proportional to the amount of time that you should be exposed to. So for example, the maximum permissible level of noise that you should listen to is 80 decibels for a period of 6 hours.
Okay.
So if you work in a noisy environment, you should not be there for more than 6 hours.
All right.
After that, it decreases down considerably to the point that if you're listening or if you're in an environment where the noise is at 100 decibels, you should not be there for more than 4 minutes.
Okay.
So it is something that has to do with the level of noise and the amount of noise that, the amount of time that you're exposed to, and also the pressure that that noise is presented to your ear.
Okay.
And these changes happen gradually. Initially, it's reversible. That is why when you go to a noisy area and you leave, you have some ringing in your ears that disappears.
Yeah.
But then with time, when the ringing becomes permanent, that means the damage is becoming permanent, and with time it is not reversible.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And Manasseh, when it comes to then the level of awareness, and as far as, you know, all those things are concerned, and this is some of the things that I want to say quote unquote innocently, but not at the same time we do on a daily basis. Or for example, people who work in a very noisy environment, and they say, I mean, this is what I do for a living, right? I can't tell my boss, listen, I only need 6 hours here and then I'm out. No, right? There's some things that, you know, some ways that you have to maneuver in the same. So then where are we at as far as raising awareness when it comes to, number one, taking care of our ear, but also, you know, what we are exposed to. And this is, you know, when it comes to our hearing.
Yeah, thank you, Winnie. That is why the Ministry of Health has developed guidelines for ear and hearing care in this country, which we are going to share across board with employers and the entire Kenyan population in general, so that they are aware on what is harmful, and in case they are exposed, on how to seek treatment and care early enough. And again, we also have a strategic plan, and in the strategic plan we plan to do a series of awareness creation, right from the community level up to the highest level, in schools and in the general community at large, to sensitize them about the harmful effects of noise.
Absolutely. All right. And talking about hearing loss, Sarah, again, there's usually that aspect of, so then, is it gradual? Is it sudden? Are there like some genetic factors, you know, associated with the same? Just take us through the whole question about hearing loss. Who is at risk of developing hearing loss?
To begin with, children, there are those risk factors, and some of which would be like low birth weight, prematurity, a lot of jaundice, we call severe jaundice, can predispose. A child also who has difficulties after birth, you know, not getting adequate oxygen and so forth. And some who have to be in, for example, neonatal ICU for a longer duration, exposure to some medications that are potentially, we call them ototoxic medications. They can damage your hearing. Those are some of those that can happen to babies. Then as well as when they begin to get older, you have measles, mumps, severe malaria, and the medication thereof, meningitis. But in our society, the commonest for acquired causes, as we call it, is otitis media, which is infection of the ear. It can come with what I think some people may have been told, like you have fluid in the ear, common with children, but also discharging ears, pain and discharging ears. So those are among the commonest in our society, as well as, of course, wax, but that one usually will give you a milder form of hearing loss, because also hearing loss is in levels. You have a mild hearing loss, you can have a moderate hearing loss. People really begin to struggle when you have a moderate hearing loss, and that's what we call a disabling hearing loss. So that if, for example, it's in a conversation like this, you'll hear some words and others are not quite clear, one will need to raise their voice and so forth. And then there are what we are already talking about, issues to do with noise-induced hearing loss. Certain medications can lead to hearing loss as well. And then, you know, age-related hearing loss as well.
Yeah, I think majority of the times people make this joke. They'll be like, "Kwani huski we basi umezeeka?" And I'm sure you hear that, you know, quite a lot. And just going back to the children, and of course you talked about some of the, you know, risk factors that might expose them to, and you talked about, you know, the whole question about low birth weight, prematurity, and all those things. Someone might be curious to understand how does that then lead to or put them at risk of developing hearing loss, because I know a lot of parents are watching and thinking, okay, but my child, you know, is this and that. We'll talk about the symptoms in just a while, but then how does that then predispose them to hearing loss?
Well, for example, when a child, by the time the child is getting to full term, there are very many things that are developing within the body.
True.
So normally, if it comes to hearing, by 28 weeks, already, you know, that the hearing system is already quite well developed.
Okay.
So children who are also premature and that development has not been completed, potentially will get that. As well as the premature babies also, some of them will need to go into NICU as well. Yeah, so because of that, the medications they may receive there may again put them at risk.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that every child who is premature automatically
yes.
becomes, you know, or has a hearing loss, but it is a risk factor, and therefore a child who has any one of those risk factors, it's important that they have screening, hearing screening done for them upon discharge from hospital.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that. And for jaundice, you also talked about
yes,
jaundice,
severe
right?
jaundice. Yes.
Yeah. All right. How does that affect the hearing?
We are talking about severe jaundice, not the usual.
Not just the usual.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Some of the jaundice is so severe such that they get what you call exchange transfusion. So that again also can lead to a hearing loss.
Yeah. All right. And Manasseh, we hear a lot of these cases, but majority of the times we don't sort of like, you know, we cannot pinpoint and say, okay, so this is a risk, and then that might lead to, you know, a case of hearing. So when it comes to like healthcare providers and having like a you know, high index of suspicion when it comes to this, where would you say we are at? And this is as far as the regulations are concerned in terms of how this is how you look at things in the hospitals. Where would you say we are at as a country?
Yes, at least every hospital in this country, in the counties, we have ENT specialists who are able to pick these cases early.
All right.
But as a ministry, we have a plan to increase the threshold of the health workers. Right from the community level, we have a plan of sensitizing community health workers so that they can pick the cases early. For example, a community health worker can be trained on how to click around the ear. You can train them using a shaker on a child to see whether they are able to hear or not. Then from the higher levels, like a dispensary, we have a nurse, health centers, we have the clinical officers who have been trained on ear and hearing care. At the higher level hospitals, level 4, 5, and 6, we have specialists who are able to pick these cases early enough.
All right. You talked about level 4, 5, and 6 that I'm curious about. What about, you know, these other ones? And especially when it comes to making sure that there is a specialist in each of these facilities, because like we said, this year's emphasis as far as, you know, the World Hearing Day is concerned is, you know, integrate ear and hearing care within the primary care. And this is very essential as far as your universal health coverage is concerned. So is this part of the plan that you talked about? Yeah,
that is part of the plan.
Okay.
To avail these specialists to at least to the health center and up to the dispensary level.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Dr. Lillian, when it comes to the diseases, can we talk about some of the symptoms that, especially parents, and especially when it comes to children? Because you see, for an adult, you might be able to tell, you know, I can't maybe hear properly, or there's a level of pain maybe in my ear, or both, and all those things. So can we start with the children? What are some of the symptoms of, you know, diseases, infections that parents need to be very cautious about?
Okay. So right from the start, the person who can really start by suspecting or telling if a child has a hearing problem is the parent or the caregiver, or the person who spends most of the time with the child. And from a very young age, we start by identifying how the small children who are yet to develop speech, how they react to noise. So if you have a very young child, does that child cry? Are they aroused, or are they woken up by very loud sounds? Are they irritated? When you're trying to talk to your very young, maybe 6-month-old child, do they fix to you? Do they look at you? Do they smile when you tell them something? And then as they grow up, when you call out their name, does the child turn? When there's a sound, do they turn to try and see where the sound is coming from? If there's some sort of entertainment as they're growing up, do they repeat what they're hearing? Are they forming baby language, you know? The language that they are babbling something, that they're trying to make sense of something, yet they are not. So if you have a child who is generally quiet, then you should suspect and take this child to hospital. Again, as they grow up, by the time a child is 18 months of age, they should be able to be forming some words, even if it is 1 or 2 words, that should be able to make sense. And so if you find that your child is behind, if you compare your child to other children of their age, of his or her age, and they are not able to form proper language, or what we call speech delay, then you suspect that your child is having a problem. Also, some of these children with hearing loss are labeled as naughty children. So these are the children who do not follow instructions. They are not able, they are not controllable. You're not able to enforce discipline in them. And so if you have a child who is very irritable, does not cooperate, you send the child somewhere, they don't do it, they don't seem to be listening, before you discipline that child, that could be a sign that that child has a problem with their hearing. And then now as they grow up, when they are in the preschool age, that is when they get a lot of infections. So any child who complains of ear pain, any child who has a discharge in their ear, or any child who is not able to completely form proper words, or a child who was speaking and then suddenly they are quiet, they are not speaking, they are not responding, that is another danger sign of a child not having or not being able to, or having a hearing loss. Some of these children have missed maybe one-sided hearing loss, or a hearing loss that is is mild. And these are the children who will not be pronouncing words properly. So if the teacher is complaining that this child is not able to pronounce some words well, especially for their age, then that's another sign of hearing loss. And now generally for adults will always complain, but the most common complaint or the earliest sign of hearing loss in an adult is ringing in their ears, what we call tinnitus. So most of them will present with that, and then now you will start developing now a problem. You feel like you cannot hear all the words. So if you have ringing in your ears, not all ringing means you have a hearing loss, but it is a sign that you should have your ears checked.
Needs to be checked. All right. Sarah talked about sometimes it goes away, you know, it's on, and this is after maybe you're exposed to, like, you know, loudness and all those things. But then again, so these are the ones that might be an indicator that something is going on, or maybe you're developing hearing loss. How long does that last? Is it like consistent ringing, maybe for like, I don't know, what, a day, 2, 3 months?
There are different types of ringing first. But the one that is characteristically associated or related to hearing loss is a high-pitch form of ringing or buzzing sound. Not written, not 100%, but most commonly. Initially, if you're exposed to very loud sounds, like if you go to a club, which is a very common thing, or if you go for a crusade or in church and you sit next to a loudspeaker, when you leave, usually you have some ringing, and that one usually goes within the first 6 hours of being exposed to that noise. But then if it is permanent, if it is lasting for more than those 6 hours, it doesn't go, then you should have your ears checked.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And we have like 2 minutes before we go on a break, and I wanted to comment on, so we talked about noise, which, you know, is a risk factor in itself. Can we talk about what we do thinking that we're cleaning our ear, but really that might put us at risk? And of course, one of the things is the earbuds that we use, right? And the whole question about waxing me, I do not want my ear to, you know, have as many wax. Is that okay or not? What is like the proper ear, if I can say, hygiene, quote unquote, and what is not?
To begin with, it's important to note that the ear is self-cleansing.
Yes.
So the ear generates wax, and a little bit of wax is good. It even acts as a lubricant to the ear.
Yeah.
So the wax will normally come towards the exterior. So when you are, washing, you can just clean on the exterior.
Right.
But even if you're using a cotton bud, it should always be in the exterior.
Right.
You should never really put the cotton bud into the ear canal, because what happens is that you break that self-cleansing mechanism of the ear, and then what happens, you might either just bring in an infection there, or even impact the little wax that's there. So some people also we have seen have attempted to clean the ear and then perforated the eardrum. So what we say is that really, if you are to use the earbud, although we discourage it, it has to always be the external part of the ear, but never insert an earbud into the ear canal.
Okay.
If indeed you ever have to get impacted wax, let the ENT doctor have it removed for you.
Yeah.
But do not attempt to put things in the ear.
How far is too far? Because there are lots of people who will say, I mean, I'm not going like all the way in, because again, you can't. But yeah, there's sometimes you usually go in and you're like, I don't know, okay, it's the ear structure in itself, it goes all the way in, right? Yes. So to what extent should we go? I know you're talking or insisting on just the exterior part. So are you talking about just out here, or?
So you're talking about just this just external part. So yes. Anything that gets into, this is the canal just begins here.
Yeah. Nothing
should be inserted into the ear canal.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're cleaning up, it's all this external part there, even behind the ear. But nothing you should never really insert anything in the ear. That's what we recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There's some people who would say, but I have sort of like an overproduction of wax. It's just a lot and it's constant. Is that maybe a condition? Is that not normal? Is that normal? What happens?
Well, people are different, and it is true. There are some people who generate a lot of wax. There are also wax softeners, which one can use if you fall into that category, which again makes the wax soft and just self-drain itself. It's just the mechanism of the ear. It will self-drain and come to the exterior where you can clean it up with a towel or, without having to insert anything into the ear.
Okay, all right. So let's take a break. But first, when we come back, the Ministry of Health is actually launching a 1-month-long, campaign. And of course, we've started. We're here today, right? Yes. And this is as far as the ear and, of course, hearing care, and of course, the are several screening centers, so I think it will be important for us to know where some of these centers, that people can go to as well. And screening, how often should we do that, as far as that is concerned. But we'll also talk about some of the treatment options that are available, especially when it comes to hearing loss, and the rehabilitation aspect of this thing. But of course, all that conversation is coming up after the break. Stay with us. This is Your World. If you have any question, you know what to do by now. Either use our social media handles at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter, or give us a call. And of course, the panel here, perfect people to answer all your questions as far as the ear and of course hearing is concerned. So again, direct them our way and we'll be answering them after the break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. Of course, the show is Your World, and today it's all about hearing. Because again, like I said, the world will be celebrating or marking World Hearing Day. That is on 3rd March, and of course, in this case, it will be on a Friday. But again, we'd like to get ahead of things, right? So we're having the conversation today, and of course, the theme for this year is ear and hearing care for all. Let's make it a reality. And of course, that is why we're having the conversation today, just to take us through some of these, conditions, problems that we need to know about, and what are some of the things that we can do to prevent cases of conditions, diseases, as far as hearing loss again is concerned. And of course, we have the perfect panel to help us drive this conversation. So Dr. Liene, I'm just going to begin with you very quickly. In terms of some of these diseases or condition, could they lead to deafness? And are there things that we can do to prevent?
Okay, so yes, most of the time hearing and ear diseases and hearing problems, they lead you to developing hearing impairment. Hearing impairment is when you are not able to perceive sound as normal. Okay. And eventually, as it progresses, hearing has different levels, and as it progresses, it can lead you to developing a hearing disability.
All right.
And when it is a disability, that means that you're not able to carry on with your normal day-to-day activities that require you to hear and communicate without needing some help.
All right.
And eventually, of course, yes, they could lead to deafness. Deafness meaning that you're not able to perceive any form of sound at all. So yes, they can lead to deafness. That is usually the end of it.
Yeah.
The end result of it, yeah.
Progression, what does that look like? Are there instances where one might develop, you know, like get to deafness, maybe like in an instant, or again, does it vary in terms of like the progression?
So progression again varies. It varies according to what you get, and also it varies from person to person.
Okay.
The very special thing about the ear is that everybody has a genetically unique ear, and everybody has a genetically unique threshold. That is a level of hearing. Now, this can progress over time. As you grow old, you're exposed to certain factors that either worsen your hearing or are protective to your hearing. So for example, not listening to two sounds is protective to my hearing, but listening to excessively loud sounds is damaging. So it depends on your environment, what you're going to be exposed to, the medications that you're going to take, the diseases that you're going to get. Some infections such as meningitis can give you a hearing loss. Some diseases that we acquire throughout our life, like diabetes and hypertension, can worsen or can contribute to your hearing loss. So the progression depends on what you're exposed to, mainly in your environment and mainly in terms of the diseases that you get that can affect your ears and your hearing.
Okay, so all right. And Manasseh, before I talk to you, because again, the WHO says primary healthcare can address over 60%, and this is of the need to for ear and hearing care services. So again, as a ministry, what exactly is happening to make sure that at the primary care level, we have the services that people need, and we also need specialists, you know, like we talked about earlier on. But again, Sarah, very quickly, I can see you have a lot of things going on over there, and of course you'll take us through some of them. But you talked about the reversible and irreversible, you know, types of hearing loss that we're dealing with. So for the reversible, right? At what point, again, when it comes to diagnosis, are you able to tell whether this is reversible or irreversible, and what exactly do they look like?
So at the point of diagnosis, this is where then the first thing that one would need to do is to check the ear canal. The ear is divided into three parts.
All right. You have your you have your Debbie there, all right?
Yes, so you have the external ear, and then you have the ear canal. And at the end of the ear canal is what you call the eardrum, and that all constitutes the outer ear.
All right.
Then you have the middle ear. The middle ear is connected to the back of the nose through a small tube that's called the eustachian tube.
All right.
This middle ear component is where, when you have conditions, for example, such as fluid in the middle ear, what the doctors will call otitis media diffusion, that is where that will be.
Right.
And then you have the inner ear, which contains two main structures. That is the cochlea, which is the organ of hearing, and then there is the balance system, called the vestibular system.
Right.
So conditions that are from the outer ear and middle ear, those ones are managed either medically or surgically, depending.
Right.
So for example, we talked about wax. It's an outer ear problem. You clean it up, sound is able to move through the outer, middle, up until the inner ear.
Right.
Similarly, if you have middle ear infection, that again can be treated. And if it were to progress where you have the eardrum has a large hole, then that is repaired and hearing is restored. So that is the reversible kind of hearing losses.
All right.
The ones that are to do with the inner ear, the cochlea, those ones, to the extent that you have a hearing loss. If, let's say, it is a mild hearing loss that is of the cochlear origin, or a moderate loss, or a severe hearing loss, or even a profound, that is now what we manage with hearing aids.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And of course, we have several types of hearing aids that you have for us today. We'll look at them in just a second. But Manasseh, the cost is usually a very big issue for a lot of people, and especially when it comes to like hearing aids and all those things. So Again, amongst your plan from the health ministry, is cost reduction one of the things that's you know, people maybe should expect?
Yes, as we have said earlier, that 60% of the causes of hearing loss are preventable.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why we are focusing on primary health care. The emphasis on primary health care is preventive and promotive care.
True.
Therefore, in terms of preventive and promotive care, we are focusing on screening, early diagnosis, and treatment.
All right.
For example, we plan to do a school health program where we screen school children on hearing loss and ear conditions.
All right.
For example, we plan to establish wellness centers for hearing and hearing care at schools. Also, we have modern simple technology which we plan to have at every maternity unit, so that when newborn children are born, we are able to screen at the maternity level. We have modern technologies like autoacoustic emission technology, which we can use to identify newborn children who have some degree of hearing loss at that stage, so that they can be prevented from generating to deafness.
All right.
Yes.
But then again, so the cost, what exactly informs, and especially is it the devices and getting them, or what happens? Because what I get from you is the focus is mostly on preventable, which is true, because again, the world is moving towards preventive care as compared to curative, which has proven to be, you know, quite expensive for so many people. But even as we focus on the preventive aspect of the same, what are the things that, you know, the ministry is putting in place just to make sure that we lessen the burden of you know, the people who really need the services, and especially when it comes to a case of someone maybe needing hearing aids?
Yes, for example, now we want to increase the number of personnel at that level.
All right.
To ensure that we have a critical mass that is able to do preventive and promotive care at that level. Then ministry is also ensuring that the commodities for managing ear and hearing conditions are at an affordable price.
That's true.
For example, now we have ensured that those commodities for ear and hearing care form part of the KEMSA list, so that when counties are procuring from KEMSA, they get those commodities at an affordable price.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And very quickly, Dr. Lillian, can we go through some of the treatments, you know, options? Again, like we talked about the question about hearing aids, but again, not everybody requires hearing aid, right?
Yes.
Sarah talked about surgery, you know, might be, or medication and all those things. But again, so to what extent does a person need hearing aid?
So it depends on the condition. So if you have problems of the external ear and the middle ear, most of the times can be treated using medications.
All right.
So like if you have an infection, you can get antibiotics, the right antibiotic, because again, some antibiotics are harmful and dangerous to your ear.
Okay.
So you should have the antibiotics prescribed by a specialist who has been trained in ear and hearing care. Again, some of them require surgical intervention, and most of the surgical interventions, they're interventions to repair. So to repair the eardrum, or to repair the small bones of the middle ear that transmit sound to the inner ear.
Right.
And at that level, we also have the hearing aids. The hearing aids, what they do is that they take sound and they amplify. They make it louder so that the middle ear is able to perceive that sound.
Yeah.
And we also have some implants that are middle ear implants that can be surgically inserted, still for the same purpose of amplifying the sound. When you come to the inner ear, they are especially for those children who are born with congenital deafness that is severe, and the adults who develop a severe form of hearing loss. Now, because of technology and all the advances, we have cochlear implants. So this is a neuroelectric device that usually collects the sound, processes the sound, and is able to transmit it to the nerve of hearing. And this, with adequate rehabilitation, can enable somebody who has a severe form of hearing loss, or who is congenitally deaf, to be able to perceive sound and to communicate adequately. So most of these technologies, they are available, and they are available together with their accessories. So for example, now if you have a hearing aid Most people, when you hear about a hearing aid, you're imagining it's that big thing that old people used to wear. But we have fancy hearing aids that look like Bluetooth devices. They can connect with your phone. You can make your phone calls through the hearing aid. You can be able to control some of the gadgets at home. Especially like you can control your television from your hearing aid, you know, adjust the volume. You can even control your lights if you have automatic lights through your hearing aids.
Fancy.
So this is technology that has come that one reduces the stigma. It makes the hearing aids more acceptable even to younger people. And so there are so many solutions that are now available. We should not be having people getting dependent and suffering from a disability, yet there are rehabilitative measures that can be put in place.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so do you want to show us what you have as far as these devices are concerned? I like the fact that you used fancy. You can control the lights with this. This is interesting. All right, but Sarah, what do you have for us?
So this is called receiver in the canal hearing aid.
All right.
It's very, very light on the ear. So basically you'll just put this tip right into the ear.
All right.
And have it seated very snugly out there. And then this goes behind the ear.
Okay.
This is a type of hearing aid that is, as I said, very light.
All right.
It's quite inconspicuous.
It's very tiny.
It's very tiny. It's lightweight.
All right.
And also today we have them coming in as rechargeable hearing aids. That means it's a charge and go.
Okay.
And with all the other additional features that Dr. Moko has also addressed, including healthable features where you can track your health, for example, how many steps you make in a day and so forth. And so it's really a good instrument. There are also others that go right into the canal.
All right.
We call them the invisible hearing aids. So you can have one that goes right into the canal.
All right.
It's an invisible one, a little bit bigger, and we call that completely in the canal. So any style, any shape, any feature that you want, you can, with these devices, you stream to your phone, and you know, all sorts of different features that you can have.
Do you want to show us how we wear that so that again our camera persons can see, you know, can actually get that, because it's very, like we said, it's very tiny, very, you know, inconspicuous. You can't tell.
So basically, this tip is aligned to the size of your ear canal.
Okay.
So you just insert it right into the canal.
Okay.
And then this part goes
behind
the ear, and then this part snits. So that's how it will look like.
I mean, look at that. You can't even tell. Can we're trying to get a close-up of this image. You can't tell that.
And it's very light in the ear.
That's very interesting. That's really, really interesting. And this is good even because I'm sure you've had a lot of, even children, they are afraid to wear you know, hearing aids because when they go to school, you know, there's stigma and all those things, and even for adults as well. So I think this is interesting, right? Okay. All right.
And then for those who have a profound deafness, they will have minimal benefit from the hearing aid. So that's where we come to cochlear implant. Cochlear implant has got two components. There is the internal component that is surgically implanted. So you have something that looks like this. It's an electrode array that is inserted right into the cochlea, which is right here. It takes up the shape of the cochlea. So it takes over the role of the inner hair cells which are in the cochlea, the function that they were doing. And so remember, this is a patient who has severe to profound hearing loss. Use of hearing aids is not benefiting them anymore. And so once it's inserted after 1 month, then they come back, and then we put now the external processor. So this one goes behind the ear. Let's see whether I can do that.
Okay.
And then it connects to the internal one through a magnet.
All right.
So this is how it looks like. So this is the external speech processor. So it comes in this design or another design, such as this one known as the Rondo, which you just again affix there. So it connects to the internal component through a magnet, because this has a magnet. So it just connects there. and the person is able to hear. So the external speech processor, what it does, it converts the sound into digital signals, which is taken down to the electrode array and then to the brain. And with proper rehabilitation, this is an early. One of the things that we're advocating for is early screening, early diagnosis, and early intervention. That's very key because of the natural development of speech and language. When you come a little bit too much later, when a child is 4, 5, 6, they have what we call a deprivation of sound. So the development of speech becomes a little bit slower than it would be if the child was much, much younger. So that's the other thing we're advocating for. And we have a solution for every level of hearing loss, all the way from mild to severe to profound.
I see that. And talking about especially the rechargeable ones, right?
Yes.
What I ask, so then how do you do that? Does it have like a special device that it comes with for you to charge it? How long are you supposed to charge it for?
It's usually overnight, so it has a charging dock, which you just insert into the charging dock, and it charges overnight, and in the morning you're good to go. Yes.
All right. I see that. I see that.
Just like
and the whole question about screening, maybe Manasseh, you can contribute to this. So then, how often should people go for screening? Where do we go? You know, to access some of the services.
So for those wellness centers which we are talking about for early screening, we want them to be their one-stop shop where you can walk in, walk out.
All right.
Yeah. So that anybody who has a need to be checked, you can go and check, be checked and be advised on the next steps. But again, we also deliberately do what we call camps, screening camps and campaigns. We go out there in the villages there, looking for these cases. Through the community health strategy.
You have an interesting program, you know, as the ministry, I think just to mark this year's World Hearing Day. And of course we were talking about this and you said you're starting with parliamentarians, and then of course this again will be rolled out across the country, right? In all the counties. This is as far as like screening services are concerned. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yes, during the World Hearing Day, which we are marking on the 3rd of March, of this month, that is this coming Friday, we plan a series of screening campaigns right from Parliament. The reason why we want to start from there is because of advocacy. Our parliamentarians are very good at reaching to the grassroots, to their constituents, to raise awareness about ear and hearing care. Then we intend to do that in the counties. For example, here in Nairobi, we tend to have a screening center at Mama Lucy. In Nyeri, we are going to have Nyandarua, Nakuru, Kisii, Jaramogi Oginga, Makueni. All those will be areas where we shall be doing screening. Okay.
All right. And for those who are saying, but for example, like in West Pokot, in Turkana, like those people who are watching us and thinking, but what about us? How do they get the information? Do you have that maybe, you know, on the MOH website, so that people again know where to go for these services? And then, is it only on Friday that the screening will be happening?
We want to conduct a 1-month-long screening.
Okay, good.
Yes, so the campaign will go on for about a month. Yes, in various counties and various centers. Yes.
All right. Okay, so this will be communicated to the public as well, so that they know where exactly to go. Okay. Dr. Lillian, can we then talk about, because again, like we said, we're focusing more on the preventive, you know, aspect of the same, because like we said, sometimes access might be a bit of an issue, which again we addressed, and cost as well, and especially when it comes to treatment and getting access to hearing assistive devices. So then, what do we do to prevent either infections or you know, a case of you know, hearing loss? We mentioned, you know, and you talked about this very profoundly, the whole question about loud noise, and now earphones, and now people have like earpods, and you know, and all those things, and we insert them literally into like she talked about, don't go into, you know, inside the ear canal, but we do that you know, sometimes. So then what is it? What are some of the things that we can do just to make sure that we reduce the risk?
Okay, so preventive measures, we are talking about hearing preventive measures across the life course. So across throughout your life, you should prevent yourself. It starts with the pregnant mother. So pregnant mother should always go and attend the ANC. There's some illnesses, there's some medication that you can get when you're pregnant that can affect your unborn child's hearing. So they should adhere to the ANC schedule and profile. Again, when they comes to delivery, we encourage pregnant mothers to deliver in hospital so that this child is able to be screened. This child is able, interventions are able to be put in place at the right time to protect this child from developing illnesses. Again, in childhood, we talk about immunization. This 60% of the childhood illnesses that affect hearing or that cause hearing loss, they are illnesses that can be prevented by immunization. So immunizing your child in good time against things like mumps and measles. The government is always creating campaigns. They are always emphasizing children will be immunized in school. So those immunizations are very key. Those are some of the diseases that can cause hearing loss in children. And as they grow older, there's now what we call targeted screening as now for the adults. If you're an adult who is at risk, the most common thing we say at work is you make sure you regularly screen your hearing and wear protective devices. You can either have earplugs or the big earmuffs, depending on the level of noise in your workplace. For the people who are taking medication that potentially can cause a hearing loss, especially the very sick people, people who are undergoing cancer treatment, they should have screening before the treatment. During the treatment, if you have any complaint in your ear, you should alert your healthcare worker and have a screening done, and after the treatment. People with chronic illnesses such as diabetes, hypertension, tuberculosis, HIV programs, all those patients should have regular ear checkups because all these are diseases that affect your illness, that affect your hearing. And finally, for the people who are exposed to noise, recreational noise, we usually say we need to enforce our noise pollution, the rules and the policies that are in place in hand with NEMA. But more at an individual level, it is safe listening practices. So one, do not use earplugs for very long, and do not listen to music or to sounds at very high levels.
How long is too long?
So we usually say 60-60. We use a 60-60 rule. So use less than 60%. Do not go above 60% of the recommended or of the volume of the gadget that you're utilizing, and do not use that gadget for more than 60 minutes. So 60%, less than 60%,
and not
or less than 60
minutes. I like that.
60 minutes.
All right. And Dr. Sarah, very quickly for those people who are watching us, and especially when it comes to taking care of the hearing devices, what would you say? What is like proper taking, care and maintenance and all those things so that it can ensure that it serves you for longer? Very quickly.
So basically, make sure that you understand how to open up the different parts of it and how to clean for them. The commonest problem with causing a blockage in the hearing aid is just wax, because the portion where the sound comes from is a small one. So we teach them how to clean off that wax very well. And then always do not just leave your hearing aid anywhere when it's not in use, and that's obviously at night. So you can put it in a dryer, which absorbs all the moisture. It's called a dehumidifier. That is good care for the hearing aid. Those are really the basics. The hearing aid is very easy to use as long as you make sure it is nice and clean, and that you are putting it in a dehumidifier in the evenings. All is well with it.
Absolutely. All right. And Manasseh, again, to bring this in closing, 2 million Kenyans, like we said, suffer some degree of hearing loss. And of course, we talked about several risk factors. So as the ministry, what is it that you hope to see, and especially when it comes to bringing down the numbers, and what do you hope to achieve, especially from the month-long campaign?
Yes. So as a ministry, in the spirit of universal health coverage, we would like to establish at least one center for every sub-county of ear and hearing care in this country. Every sub-county should have at least one center for screening and treatment of ear and hearing conditions. And we would also would like to train more of the health workers, including doctors, more clinical officers, more nurses, and community health volunteers to help us on this preventive and promotive care.
Absolutely, and we hold you to account, eh?
Yes,
so
yes.
that we see that happen,
Yes.
so that a lot more people, you know, have access really, you know, when it comes to, you know, ear and hearing care. But thank you so much for coming by today. Really, again, this is a conversation that we might want to have like for the entire day, because it's very important and touches all aspects of our lives. But in the interest of time, we have to say goodbye. So Asanteni sana Manasseh Bocha, Head Clinical Services and Focal Person, you know, as far as EHC is concerned, and that is ear and hearing care is concerned, and of course from the Ministry of Health. And we also have Dr. Lilian Wairimu Moko, who's an ENT surgeon at Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital, and not forgetting as well Dr. Sarah Ndegwa, who's an audiologist as well as a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. So have yourselves a lovely day ahead. I know you've picked and learned a lot from today's conversation, so I hope that again you put that to practice, and especially when it comes to preventive care and taking care of our ears. So have yourselves a lovely day ahead. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on Your World. But until then, stay safe and goodbye. Take care of your ear. Goodbye.